Oi, welcome back. It's good to see you.
You too.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Hornik, The Independent.
And I'm Kevin Perry, The Independent.
We're here to talk about the return of Ted Lasso to Apple TV, the show about an American soccer coach who goes on an unlikely journey after being hired to coach an English Premier League team, became the streamer's biggest hit when it first arrived on our screens during the pandemic. It ran for nearly 3 seasons before wrapping up neatly when AFC Richmond narrowly missed out on the title and Ted headed home to Kansas City to be closer to his son. Now, after a 3-year gap, the show is back with a new story to tell. Kevin, are you excited to spend more time with Ted and the gang?
I'm not so sure, to be honest, Caitlin. I think that the three-season arc kind of wrapped up really neatly. We got the story we wanted to know about Ted and his adventures in England, and I think that also I think that the show maybe felt a little bit of its time. Obviously, as you mentioned, it was in the pandemic when it first kind of came out and hit, and it was that period of sort of we were looking for positive
Mm.
feelings at the time, and Ted definitely gave us that. And I think that. Um, Now maybe it's kind of easier to be a little bit more cynical about the show. I think by the end of the 3 seasons run, it started to become a little bit treacly.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, it kind of wrapped up neatly, and I'm not sure we needed this fourth season. But how about you? You excited to hear more from Ted Lasso? See more Ted Lasso?
Yeah, I am. I mean, that it's a totally valid point, right? Like they did kind of wrap it in a bow for us. Um, Listen, I loved this show. I was late to it, so I didn't watch it during the pandemic like everyone else. Everyone was talking about it, and I was like, yeah, I'll get to it when I do. And eventually I did, and I binged all 3 seasons. I think it was like last year or 2 years ago in like 2 months. Like I couldn't get enough of it. So obviously I was really excited when they were like season four. And I think there's something so familiar about it. So revisiting these characters kind of in a different era of my life and a different, part of their lives, there's something familiar and fun and exciting. It feels like a warm hug. So yes, needless to say, very, very excited. I've been looking forward to this for so long. So, in the first episode, we find Ted working at a grocery store, navigating co-parenting with his estranged wife, and watching from the stands as his son plays on a local soccer team. And then Rebecca and Keely and Higgins turn up with an offer he can't refuse, or can he? What did you make of the first episode, Kevin?
Well, it certainly hasn't sort of quickened the pace. I mean, you expect with Ted Lasso to be a sort of slow, enjoyable show and like sort of warm bath of a show. And yeah, I think our the Independent's TV critic Nick Hilton compared the show this season to a sort of aging striker who's not quite as fast as he used to be. And I think
Mm,
that's definitely true from this first episode. We of course all know what decision Ted's going to make, and he spends the entire episode making it. Um, but obviously, well, the best thing about this episode is it's really fun to spend time with Rebecca, Keeley, and Higgins in the United States. We've spent so long seeing Ted and his sort of American foibles in British culture. It's really fun to see them in America. I love, obviously, we start off, we go straight to get some barbecue with them. Which is great. I thought one thing that I thought that was funny about that scene is that we get a kind of very abrasive American server which kind of shocks them at first. And I thought that was an interesting contrast because certainly in the World Cup, we've seen so much on the news screens and on the sports coverage about how European and South American fans really embraced American culture and being like raving about how nice everyone is. And in fact, that comes up later in the episode. I think Rebecca says, I couldn't survive here. Everyone's too nice. So it's funny that they kind of start off with that abrasive barbecue person and they forget about that and remind us that everyone's really nice in America. Um, what about you, Caitlin? What did you enjoy about this episode?
I kind of liked the role reversal, and you touched on that a little bit in the barbecue scene, right? It's like, you know, Ted was kind of showing this uncharacteristic restraint, and the Brits were a bit more forthcoming and almost like jubilant, being in America, and it is so reminiscent of what we just experienced with the World Cup, with the Scots coming over and drinking Boston Dry and the Norway fans doing their row. Like there was so much joy in what they were doing and how they were embracing American culture. And that was, we got a little taste of that with Ted Lasso. with that barbecue scene, and the repeated gag of Rebecca dropping barbecue sauce on and staining all of her very expensive clothes. It's just, it was funny, and there was something, again, this like familiarity to it, but seeing as Ted almost felt like a fish out of water to me in his hometown, being surrounded by his friends from like a different time in his life. So I thought it was a really interesting way to reintroduce us to these characters because it did feel familiar, but also a little foreign. So that juxtaposition was really interesting. But the writing still felt smart and sharp. And it really did pick up where we left off, even if a few years have gone by. Um, but Ted felt a little muted to me. Like he's definitely grappling with something, and I'm, curious to see kind of how that plays out this season. And there's definitely some stuff going on up here and in his heart. So I'm curious to see what a return to London kind of does for him. But thinking about, this trio of Brits showing up in Kansas City and chowing down on some barbecue, and Rebecca and Keely walking through, I guess, the downtown area with like a Kansas City shirt and a Kansas City hat. Do you think that was a fair representation of British people in the United States?
I think so. I think as you mentioned with the World Cup, I mean, people have really embraced the sort of America's really embraces people who are coming to visit. And I think that came across really well. I thought that maybe it was a bit overdone. I don't think it's as confusing as the show makes out that Kansas City straddles Kansas and Missouri. I think we got that. Um, but yeah, no, I thought it was really fun, and obviously, there's some really great scenes of them, going out shopping and kind of really immersing themselves in Kansas City culture, and I thought that was one of the best parts of the episode.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think it was really interesting to kind of see them so immersed in the culture. I think they did a good job of that. I think there's a scene with Higgins where he's hoping to go to a museum and it's closed, and he pivots to this Negro League museum and exploring like the baseball, of years past. And I think, it was a really interesting way to kind of broach the decision to set the season on a women's football team. Um, so do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I did learn something interesting from this episode when we get told that women weren't allowed to play football in England until 1971. I have to
Hmm.
not know that. Obviously, women played football historically, but then in 1921, the FA banned women from playing football on their pitches. There was a 50-year period where women weren't allowed to play in sort of official matches or on pitches. So that was shocking to me, and that was something I learned. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that obviously is one of the strengths of this season is going to be showcasing some of the women's game, and obviously they tell us in the show that the amazing stadium they go to was the first purpose-built women's stadium in the world,
Yeah.
the soccer stadium. So yeah, what do you think about this kind of venture into women's football?
There's so much women's sports are taking up more space in conversations here in the US. Especially the WNBA has had a major, major resurgence, given players like Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham. So I think to center a season of a massively successful show like Ted Lasso on women's sports is huge. And I think the first three seasons of Ted Lasso did for like to drum up interest in soccer for Americans. I'm hoping that it'll do the same now for women's sports. Like soccer, yes, but beyond that, like there's also just in thinking about women's sports and how much it's growing and really a booming part of the culture right now. There's actually a women's professional baseball league that is debuting in, I think it's Illinois this summer, and there are like just a handful of teams, and they're doing this kind of trial thing for a month or so. As a massive baseball fan, that really excites me. So I'm hoping that by centering women's sports in this like really successful show, that there will be more opportunities for women to kind of, experience sports, whether on the field or off, or cheering in the stands. So I think it's really cool. I'm not convinced it's gonna work, and there's part of me that is like really skeptical, but I want to believe because that is what Coach Lasso tells us. You gotta believe.
The show's all
Um, that's it. That's what the show's about. So I'm like putting full faith in Jason Sudeikis and the writers and producers that they have a clear vision, they know what they're doing, they're going to execute for the fans and, maybe pick up some non-believers along the way and convert them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think so too. And I think it kind of gives them a bit of an opportunity to kind of replay some of the greatest hits
Yeah,
original series in this kind of new landscape. Speaking of greatest hits, do you want to hear my fun fact about the song at the end of the
I
episode?
do.
So it's obviously it's Marcus Mumford singing. And it's singing about Kansas City. So
Hmm.
you might think, oh, he must have written this specifically for this scene. But it's actually a song from an album called The New Basement Tapes. It was recorded in 2014. It was all Bob Dylan lyrics that he'd handwritten that had never been recorded. So it's Bob Dylan's words, Marcus Mumford singing,
Wow.
Haim on backing vocals.
Ooh.
And here's a surprise cameo you weren't expecting in Ted Lasso. On guitar is an actor and musician named Johnny Depp. So there you go. That's a
What?
little, yeah, that's a little surprise.
That's
Um,
amazing.
what do you th after that first episode? You said you're excited about this season. How are you feeling? Are you more or less excited for the season to come after that first episode?
Definitely more. I think you had a really good point that it was a drawn out first episode. Like I was kind of expecting them to like jump back into it in London. So I wasn't expecting a full 40 minutes in Kansas City. I'm not mad about it, but I'm like now chomping at the bit to get to London and to see Coach Beard um and Roy and see who from previous seasons they can integrate and how they find how they develop the new characters in the women's team and kind of what those dynamics are like. So on one hand, I'm a little annoyed that we didn't get London in the first episode, but I also think it was really strategic in drumming up excitement for the rest of the season. So, what about you?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And I think that it was nice just at the end. We saw some kind of him sat at his desk looking at his mementos from seasons gone by. And of course, it was always nice to see a little tiny cameo from our independent colleague Trent Krim
Yes.
byline on the story. So yeah, I'm still a little on the fence about this season, but we'll definitely be back next week to talk about episode 2. And Ted, surprise, surprise, does make a decision to return to Richmond. So we'll see how that goes next week. Anyway, thank you then, Caitlin. Bye.
See ya.